love this kind of match, right? I love the smasher of Bryson, full swing, ball straight up in the air at the green, pumping the crowd up as best he can.
I love this kind of match, right? And I love the smash of Bryson's full swing, going straight up in the air, hyping the crowd like a rock star. The voice on the mic was trembling with excitement, and for good reason. What we were watching wasn't just golf, it was war disguised as sportsmanship. The most jaw-dropping comeback in golf history was happening live, stroke by stroke, as Bryson DeChambeau clawed his way out of humiliation to etch his name in golf's legends forever. But here's the real twist. What really sparked that fire in him, and how did it turn the entire Ryder Cup upside down for Team USA? Stay locked in, because this story only gets crazier from here. The day started with Bryson hitting second shots, grinding in silence while the world waited for something explosive. And then, boom, it came. September 2025, New York, Bethpage Black. The air was thick with pride, swagger, and grudges. Team Europe, led by Luke Donald, strutted into enemy territory with the cold confidence of men who'd already seen the future. They were up 12-5, seconds away from their first road Ryder Cup victory since the miracle at Medina. Team USA, under Keegan Bradley, looked cornered. But that's when miracles are born. This wasn't just golf anymore. It was a full-blown cultural showdown. LIV Golf defectors, ego battles, social media trash talk that spilled into the crowd. The fairways weren't fields of play, they were trenches. And standing dead center in that chaos were two polar opposites: England's calculating tactician Matt Fitzpatrick and America's human thunderclap, Bryson DeChambeau. Bryson had already thrown the first verbal grenade, calling Bethpage our fortress. Fitzpatrick smirked and fired back, "Accuracy wins wars." The crowd went wild. It was perfect foreshadowing for the chaos ahead. By 11:25 a.m. ET, as both men stepped onto the first tee, 40,000 fans had packed in, a roaring storm of flags, chants, and beer-fueled adrenaline. Every Bryson grunt threw a 320-yard bomb sent shockwaves, while European fans answered with mocking, slow claps that echoed through the hills. The Ryder Cup wasn't just being played, it was being fought. Cameras zoomed in on Bryson, muscles flexing, veins popping, the crowd going insane. Fitzpatrick didn't even flinch, pretending not to notice, but everyone watching could feel it. The tension was electric. The entire Ryder Cup seemed to orbit around these two polar opposites: power versus precision, chaos versus calm, brawn versus brain. But let's be clear, behind those polished smiles and polite nods, this wasn't about golf anymore. This was pride, revenge, humiliation waiting to happen right on American turf. From the very first swing, Fitzpatrick looked like a man possessed. His opening birdie on the par 4 first hole sliced through Bryson's bravado like a laser-cutting steel. By the third hole, Bryson's nerves cracked. A brutal three-putt from 40 feet handed Fitzpatrick another point, and the Englishman didn't blink. 2 up, then 3, then 4, and by the 6th hole, he was 5 up, 5. That's the kind of lead golf commentators whisper about, like it's folklore. Bethpage Black, usually a roaring festival of cheers and madness, suddenly felt like a funeral march for Team USA's hopes. Every Fitzpatrick fairway hit was another dagger in the chest. Every Bryson missed putt was a collective groan that rippled through the bleachers. It was painful, but you couldn't look away. Commentators couldn't stop talking about Fitzpatrick's rhythm: smooth, precise, deadly. He didn't shout, didn't flex, didn't need to. His silence was intimidation. Meanwhile, Bryson was out there swinging like he was trying to break the sound barrier, playing long drive hero instead of strategic golf warrior. Then came hole 7, the moment comedy met tragedy. Bryson unleashed a rocket off the tee, straight into a bunker. The crowd gasped, a mix of shock and disbelief. It wasn't just a bad shot, it was a symbol. The power player was getting buried, literally, while Fitzpatrick just walked past cool as ice, eyes locked on victory. Fitzpatrick stepped into the same bunker, calm as a surgeon under pressure, clipped the ball to 10 feet, and sank the putt like it was nothing. 5 up. The British tabloids could already smell the headline. Fitzmagic destroys the beast. But in the middle of the crowd's drunken boos and Bryson's jaw clenched so tight it could have cracked granite, something dangerous started to stir. You could feel it. Beneath the humiliation, the rage was starting to bubble. And that's when Bryson becomes terrifying. Because if there's one thing history has proven about Bryson DeChambeau, it's that his fury, when mixed with 350-yard nukes and a crowd desperate for a hero, can flip humiliation into legend. By the 8th hole, Bryson looked finished. His hat pulled low, his swagger gone, his entire body screaming, "Make it stop!" The same fans who once worshipped him now murmured in uneasy silence. But then, golf's chaos engine roared back to life. Fitzpatrick finally flinched. A missed 9-footer for par cracked the armor, and Bryson pounced, draining his putt to steal the hole. And in that instant, the silence shattered. A spark, a roar, a heartbeat revived. The crowd erupted. "Bryson! Bryson!" chanting like an army brought back from the dead. You could almost see the adrenaline surge through him. By the 9th hole, it was cinematic, like a scene out of a sports movie. Bryson launched a 350-yard missile straight down the center, and Fitzpatrick blinked for the first time all day. 1 wedge, 1 roll, birdie, 3 down. But the celebration, oh, it was wild. He fist-pumped like he just won the entire Ryder Cup. The energy flipped in seconds, from despair to electricity. The crowd was feeding him, and he was giving it right back tenfold. For the first time all day, Fitzpatrick didn't look invincible. He looked human. Bethpage exploded, flags waving, chants booming, and commentators losing their minds over a comeback brewing out of pure chaos. Bryson's data-driven brain melted away, replaced by raw, unfiltered adrenaline. Bryson wasn't crunching numbers anymore. He was feeling every swing. Logic was gone, replaced by pure instinct and emotion. As he stepped into the back nine, the entire match flipped on its head. Fitzpatrick still held the technical edge, sure, but this wasn't golf anymore. It was theater, a heavyweight fight in polos and spikes. Every hole felt like a round. Every roar a punch landed. Bryson was buzzing, talking to himself, to the fans, even to Fitzpatrick. "You hearing that? They're with me," he shouted with that wild, defiant grin. Fitzpatrick only smiled, that smug little smirk that said, "You're still losing," but the smile was cracking. And by hole 10, the entire Ryder Cup storyline was starting to change. Team USA, once left for dead, suddenly had life again. You could feel it in the air. Bryson's chaos wasn't staying in his lane. It was contagious. His energy bled into the other American players. Captain Keegan Bradley was back to fist-pumping like a man possessed. And suddenly, Bethpage Black wasn't just a golf course, it was a battlefield of belief. The man once booed for jumping to LIV Golf was now being reborn as the American hero of the Ryder Cup. The irony was almost poetic. Then came the explosion. The back nine began, and Bryson DeChambeau didn't just play golf, he ascended hole 11. A par 3 carved into a wall of chaos became his baptism moment. 7 iron, 8 feet. Birdie! The crowd detonated, 2 down. Someone screamed, "He's coming!" And it felt like the ground was shaking. Then hole 12. Driver, wedge, 6-foot birdie, 1 down. Fitzpatrick, cool and clinical all day, suddenly started blinking too fast, pacing too slow. His machine-like rhythm was cracking. Bryson, dripping sweat and grinning like a man possessed, ripped off his cap and waved it to the roaring crowd. They fed him energy, and he gave it back double. Fitzpatrick, meanwhile, was living every golfer's nightmare, watching perfection slip through his fingers in real time. Then came hole 13. Bryson launched an absolute missile over the bunkers, landed on the green, and rolled in a 10-footer for another birdie. The place erupted. Fitzpatrick barely held his ground, matching Bryson's fire with cold precision. But this wasn't golf anymore, it was drama in motion. Every shot felt like a scream, every reaction like an explosion. The duel had turned into a symphony of defiance. Stat sheets later would show DeChambeau gaining plus 3.2 strokes putting across 4 holes, but numbers couldn't capture what was happening out there. This wasn't math, this was madness. Keegan Bradley was fist-pumping so hard from the team box he nearly lost his headset. The U.S. bench was howling, chest-bumping, feeding off the chaos. Bethpage Black, that cathedral of chaos, had flipped from funeral silence to pure delirium. The energy was no longer tense, it was volcanic. Hole 14 nearly tipped the entire world upside down. Fitzpatrick drained a 15-foot par putt, staring straight into Bryson's soul as the American barely missed from 12. It was a gut punch, but it didn't even matter. The momentum was too strong, the crowd too wild. Commentators whispered like conspirators, "We might be watching the greatest comeback in Ryder Cup history." And it felt like it. Bryson wasn't just battling Fitzpatrick anymore, he was fighting destiny itself. And destiny at Bethpage was painted red, white, and blue. You could feel it pulsing in the ground, in the stands, in every chant that shook the trees. By the time they reached the 17th, the air was practically buzzing, like the course itself was holding its breath. The scoreboard glowed all square. Fitzpatrick's massive 5-hole cushion had evaporated like mist under the sun. Bryson, red-faced, defiant, and drenched in sweat, had clawed his way out of the abyss. The par 3 17th, short, brutal, and notorious for breaking hearts, was about to write its next legend. Fitzpatrick hit first, a perfect dart landing 20 feet short. The crowd leaned in, and his putt lipped out. The sound that followed wasn't a cheer or a groan. It was a collective gasp. It was cinematic. Then Bryson stepped up. Stone-faced, eyes locked, the noise fading into silence. He rolled it smooth, dead center. Boom! The place erupted. Bryson screamed, "Let's go!" as he leapt like a man set free from gravity. The match all square heading into the 18th, and the crowd losing its mind. What started as a duel had transformed into a resurrection. The 18th hole wasn't just a golf hole anymore, it was chaos made flesh. Fitzpatrick in the left rough, Bryson buried short in the bunker. Two terrible lies, two impossible hopes. You could hear a pin drop as both men faced the unthinkable. Bryson went first. Boom! Blasted it out of the sand to 10 feet. Pure guts and violence in one motion. The crowd roared like they'd just seen a miracle. Fitzpatrick answered, chipping to 6 feet. Cold, clinical, desperate. Then came the silence. Thousands holding their breath. Fitzpatrick stepped up, missed. The gasp echoed across Bethpage. Bryson stepped up next, his chance at total redemption, and missed too. The crowd didn't even know how to react. It was chaos and catharsis all at once. The match halved. The scorekeeper scribbled in disbelief, half a point each. But oh, what a half point. It didn't win the cup. It won something bigger. It brought the soul of American golf back from the dead. Europe would still hoist the Ryder Cup trophy, but nobody was chanting Europe. They were chanting one name, Bryson! His comeback wasn't about numbers anymore. It was about resurrection. The crowd didn't care about standings. They cared about the fire that had just burned through Bethpage. Fitzpatrick looked hollowed out, like a man who just stared into a storm and lost control of the weather. Bryson, meanwhile, tossed his ball into the stands like a rock star, throwing his mic after the encore. The crowd went berserk. Golf had just witnessed lunacy disguised as legacy, and everyone loved every second of it. When the dust settled, when the chants turned to post-match interviews and the air filled with champagne spray, one truth remained unshakable. Bryson DeChambeau had rewritten the Ryder Cup story. Europe technically won 14.5 to 13.5, but the moral victory? That belonged to the man who refused to stay buried. From 5 down in humiliation to halved in heroism, it was a comeback that felt biblical. Bryson's Sunday wasn't just a game, it was an emotional rebirth, the kind of story that turns athletes into folklore. At 2:45 p.m. Eastern Time, the match officially ended in a tie, the exact moment every future Ryder Cup documentary will slow down to black and white. Fitzpatrick, ever the gentleman, admitted softly, he just wouldn't go away. And Captain Keegan Bradley summed it up perfectly. He's our heart. For once, Bryson wasn't the villain. He was the legend reborn. As the crowd spilled out of Bethpage that afternoon, the chants of Bryson, Bryson echoed like thunder fading into the distance. The final scoreboard might have said Europe 14.5, USA 13.5, but every soul leaving that course knew who'd owned the day. Bryson DeChambeau didn't just save face, he shifted the culture. He took a sport built on restraint and made it feel electric again. Cameras followed him as he walked off, his shirt drenched, his grin unstoppable. The man who once divided fans had suddenly united them, not with words, but with fight. Commentators could barely keep their voices steady, calling it one of the rawest emotional performances golf has ever seen. They weren't exaggerating. This wasn't country club golf anymore. This was rock and roll on grass. Social media went nuclear. Every clip, every fist pump, every scream was trending. Memes, slow-mo edits, highlight reels, all carrying the same message. Bryson's back. Even his critics had to eat their words. The so-called mad scientist had turned into the people's champion, a symbol of reckless belief and comeback energy that no stat could measure. But beyond the cheers, beyond the adrenaline, there was something deeper. Bryson had shown what golf forgot, that emotion isn't weakness, it's fuel. He played like a man who'd tasted humiliation and refused to swallow it. That's why it hit different. That's why fans cried, cheered, and lost their voices. This wasn't just redemption, it was a cultural reset. Fitzpatrick would later admit he turned the crowd into a weapon, and he wasn't wrong. Bethpage had turned into an arena, not a golf course. It was chaos, unity, and defiance all rolled into one. Even European fans found themselves clapping by the end. Because deep down, everyone loves a resurrection story. By sunset, as the cameras panned across the littered fairways and fading daylight, one truth glimmered brighter than the trophy itself. Golf had its rebel messiah again. Bryson DeChambeau didn't just fight for a point, he fought for belief. And in doing so, he reminded everyone why we watch. For the moments when numbers don't matter, but heart does. He wasn't just a golfer out there, he was the embodiment of American fight. Every swing, every roar, every glare told the story of a man clawing his way back from mockery to meaning. The storylines exploded like wildfire. Fitzpatrick's stumble, Europe's shaky victory, and Bryson's long-awaited vindication after years of LIV ridicule. Even Luke Donald, the winning captain, admitted it straight up. That match changed the energy of the whole day. And he was right, because for 3 delirious, heart-pounding hours, golf forgot all about its rules, its etiquette, its polite little handshakes. It became pure theater, raw, messy, and magnificent, the kind of spectacle that grabs you by the collar and refuses to let go. Fans didn't see swings and scorecards. They saw emotion, defiance, redemption. In the aftermath, social media lost its mind. Clips went viral across the planet. Bryson screaming, Fitzpatrick staring down fate, the crowd melting into chaos. The internet crowned it the most insane comeback in golf history, and not one person argued. When Bryson finally faced the reporters, eyes still wet, he simply said, "I love my country." Fitzpatrick, composed even in defeat, replied with his signature calm, "Pressure defines us." And right there, that single contrast, raw heart versus cold control, golf rediscovered its soul. It was no longer about tradition or tidiness. It was about emotion. It was about fight. Sure, Europe kept the cup, 14.5 to 13.5, but Bryson DeChambeau, he kept the moment. He turned humiliation into legend. He didn't just battle Fitzpatrick, he fought doubt, ridicule, and every demon that ever whispered he didn't belong. And in doing so, he gave fans something they hadn't felt in years: goosebumps. But make no mistake, this saga isn't over. There are still unseen tensions, rivalries brewing in silence, and moments that could flip the Ryder Cup forever. So hit that like, subscribe, and share button, because this fire's just getting started, and you won't want to miss what comes next. See you on the next one.